Good day and welcome to AFL Goldfields TV. My name's Yeendy, very excited to be with you again, and I'm with a great man who's joining us for the first time this year, Roger, who is the senior coach of the Ballarat Umpire Association. Thanks for joining us, Rog.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
Yeah, certainly exciting time for you guys. A lot happening. Apparently, from what I hear, you are the envy of AFL Victoria with all the progress that's going on behind the scenes.
We've got some really good numbers, Chris, and that's unheard of in umpire ranks, I suppose. We're pushing over 320 now, and when you compare that back to 5 or 6 years ago when we had 160, we've doubled our numbers. So things are tracking along fairly nicely. Got some really good young people becoming involved in umpiring, and hopefully all looking forward to a positive year in 2017.
Now, you guys do have a mass coverage as well. You don't just cover the Ballarat competition. Where else do you cover?
So we do the Ballarat Football League, the Central Highlands Football League, the Maryborough Castlemaine District Footy Netball League, and then with the growth of women's and youth girls footy, we're doing a number of games in those leagues as well. So yeah, we certainly stretch ourselves out a fair way.
So the growth in numbers has probably come at a good time, as you say, because we're seeing a big increase in the women's teams.
Yeah, it's been very helpful, and I don't think we'd be able to cover those games without that growth. The growth for us has come in younger people, so people in that kind of, 14 to 19 age category, and that's pleasing because you can develop those young umpires into better umpires, and hopefully they stick with the group. And we've got 7 umpires this year down at the VFL/AFL, so that's a really positive sign that we're doing something right.
Fantastic. It goes to show you're doing the right job as well, mate.
Well, hopefully so. We're getting there. It's not an easy job at times, but it's rewarding when you see people go on to bigger and better things down the AFL and other places.
Speaking of big things, one of the key issues we're here to discuss is the rule changes that we will be seeing implemented across the competition. There was a few things the AFL rolled out over the summer break. Let's look with one of the first rules that has been implemented.
So yeah, in our local competitions this year, there's 3 main ones that will be implemented. The first of those is the what's been called the third man up, or the non-designated ruckman rule. So now at every single ruck contest around the ground, be it a boundary throw-in, be it what we call the field throw-up around the ground, or the centre bounce, the ruckman must nominate before we throw the ball up. So at every contest we'll be asking who the nominated ruckmen are. No other player can get involved in that contest, so only those 2 ruckmen, and if a third player did get involved and touch the ball in any way, we would pay a free kick against them. And it's raised a few questions from clubs, quite obviously, because obviously, as good as I think our boundary umpires are, sometimes their throws aren't always as long as they need to be, or they can be a little bit off centre. So what happens then? And we've put some guidelines in place for our guys, and we can talk about those today.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Now, we did see, I think it was particularly raised with the women's competition, that we did see a few throw-ins fall short. One of the things was one ball had been thrown over, missed the pack, so the 2 competing ruck people, and it hit one of the midfielders, and the free kick was given to the other opposition. How are you guys going to address that?
So we've instructed our umpires that the field umpires, when they're watching those throw-ins, if they are, a bad throw-in, and a bad throw-in is one that's well and truly off the mark, not a metre or 2 left or right, to ask the boundary umpire to recall it. So we'd have the throw-in again, or similarly if the ball fell short of where the ruckman was standing and donged someone in the back of the head, like the Adelaide example from a couple of weeks ago, we'd ask them to throw it in again. And then if it is a reasonable throw-in and it makes contact with someone else who's standing there passively, so perhaps with their back to the ball, we would probably get that one thrown in again or call play on. So we're not going to be over the top with this. The rule was obviously brought in with the intent to stop that person coming over the top and knocking the ball, and that's the person that we'll be kind of targeting. And from what we've seen in the practice matches in the first couple of weeks, Chris, the clubs have adapted to it really quickly. The ruckmen are putting their hands up and nominating even before we ask, and we haven't had any issues at all. But I'm sure there'll be some things that pop up throughout the year, but so far so good. And look, it'll be an education process for everyone, players and the umpires.
So be safe to say that should it hit the third person, obviously not going up intentionally, boundary throw-in might be the likely scenario.
Absolutely. So yeah, common sense kind of umpiring, I think.
And for those who have been following country footy across Victoria, this is not a new rule that has been implemented. It has been implemented through the AFL Victoria Masters competition as well. But just speaking from experience, I found umpiring some of those games are actually quite an easy rule to administer, particularly around the grounds.
Exactly, and footballers are smart people. They quickly pick up on what they can and can't do, and as I said, in 2 weeks of practice matches so far, we haven't had any issues with it at all, and the clubs are obviously educated their players on it. We'll continue to do that, before the game, talking to the coaches and the players, and hopefully we don't have any issues with it.
Sensational. Right now, what's the second rule that's been implemented for 2017?
So the second one, I don't think we'll pay a lot of free kicks for this year. It hasn't been an issue for us. Obviously, at AFL, issue more than the local league, and that's the head-high contact where the player tries to draw the free kick by dropping their knees to gain a high tackle.
Mm-hmm.
In some circles, it's been called, I suppose, the Joel Selwood rule. And,
yep.
But look, we don't see a lot of that at local level. Instruction to our umpires is you must be 100% certain the player is trying to gain the high tackle. We've always known the duck, and we always call play on if a player does duck. This is a little bit different, so we're looking for the people who drop their knees in a tackle, drop to the ground to try and gain an around the neck free kick. So the trigger for our umpires, Chris, is we're looking for where that initial point of contact on the tackle is made. So if the tackle is around the waist and the player drops their knees to try and slide it up around their neck, well, that's a trigger for us to say, well, that's not a free kick. What we're saying to umpires is look to see where the initial tackle is made and to see whether the player who's tackled is trying to drop their knees to gain, the high tackle.
And I guess if you're looking at AFL circumstances, the players are highly skilled. Their skill level is probably more greater to be able to try and pull those free kicks, whereas at other levels, probably not so easy to do, and they're probably a bit more focused on just winning the ball in general.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, at some levels you have people who play for free kicks. We all know that, and you kind of quickly pick up in a game who those kind of people are. But I would say, as you just said, that most of our players are there just to win the footy, not about trying to win a cheap free kick.
Exactly, mate. Now, what's the third rule that's been implemented?
So the third rule is a rule that the AFL implemented last year, which is the 5. They had the 5 metre protected area, which grew out to 10 metres. So, and we noticed in the early part of last year there was a lot of 50 metre penalties paid because people were encroaching upon that 10 metre protected arc. So last year we stuck with a 5 because we felt that it wasn't giving our local clubs enough notice. It's something that you need to be aware of when you're setting up your structures and stuff around the ground. So this year we've actually had to implement the 10 metre protected area as well. And again, we're not going to go over the top with this. I think in the early part of the AFL season last year, we saw games where there was 5 and 10, 50 metre penalties paid because of people encroaching into that area. That'd be disastrous from our point of view. So we will be trying to educate the players out on the field as much as possible. And when I say educated, we see a player moving towards that 10 metre protected area, we'll obviously be encouraging them to move away. And similarly, we give people a chance to get out of that 10 metre protected area once a free kick or a mark's taken place. So, I think we'll see, certainly in the early days, an increase perhaps in 50 metre penalties. But, again, it's common sense umpiring. We don't want to be over the top and paying 50 metre penalties when someone's there not really having much of an impact on things. I mean, we just want to move them out rather than penalise them.
And you speak about educating the players. To do that, you've got to educate the umpires as well. So what have you been saying to the guys over the pre-season since this rule's been introduced, sort of giving them more of the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah, exactly. And very much, asking players to get out rather than just penalising them. So we say to our guys with anything, anytime we ask a player to move back on the mark, we always like to ask them twice before we penalise them, and it'll be the same with this. So it'll be, can you please, come out of the 10 metre protected area, come out of the 10 metre protected area, and if they don't respond, then there may be a penalty, but we certainly won't be just blowing the whistle, first up for someone who's encroaching. I suppose that the challenging situation will come at people who, once that mark is set and that 10 metre protected area is in place, someone who wanders through, they're the ones who probably will be penalised rather than people who were in that area initially.
And we've got to be honest as well. We say the 10 metre zone, but there's no preciseness about it. When you're on the field, you can't. It's like a 50 metre penalty. It's very hard to judge exactly. So It might be 8 metres where you give the players the benefit of the doubt and let them stay there. It might be 12 metres, but at the end of the day, you can only do your best.
Exactly, and your idea of 10 metres may be different to mine. So it just comes back, and I think that the best umpires we have at any level are the ones that show common sense. We're not out there to make the show. We're out there to be part of it, to enjoy it, obviously, but we don't need to be the centre of attention. And sometimes, I say to our guys, you don't want to make yourselves the focus of the attention. The key attributes of a good umpire are communication and just having common sense regarding every situation on the ground.
So particularly with this rule, what your message for clubs would be to just direct your players to clear the space and give as much space as possible?
Be aware of the rule and certainly, where possible, listen to the umpire out in the ground. Be aware of the situation, because it's new for our guys, so there'll be obviously it'll take some time. We're not going to go over the top with it, as I said. Be aware of what's happening on the field.
Well, Rog, we do appreciate you joining us on AFL Goldfields TV. We look forward to joining you again throughout the year, and it's always good to have an expert to give us an insight into all that's going on around the Umpire Association. And sounds like it's an exciting year ahead on and off the field.
Yeah, looking forward to a really good one. As I say, having the numbers in place now with 80 new umpires this year, it takes a massive stress off you that not having to chase umpires every week for games. And I think that was the least enjoyable part about my job, is that I was having to ring people, Thursday, Friday to try and find an umpire. But we don't have those problems this year. So hopefully we can focus more on coaching and the things that will improve our umpires.
Sensational, mate. Well, we look forward to being with you guys again soon on AFL Goldfields TV. We hope you got something out of this video, and look forward to joining